First, just want to explain a little bit about this series. So this is proudly sponsored by HubSpot as part of their Partner Growth Accelerator program. And after helping dozens of companies successfully leverage Event Happily to power their events directly within HubSpot, the three of us recognized that there is an interesting pattern emerging and that there is a compelling story to share. So we realized we had an opportunity to share it. Basically, the important message that maximizing event effectiveness and ROI using the right tools and strategies, i.e. HubSpot, works. HubSpot provides a powerful CRM foundation, Happily offers purpose-built event management tools, and Growth serves as the expert team who brings it all together seamlessly. So that's what this three-part series is all about. Maximizing your event ROI with HubSpot. And yes, looking back, we probably could have chosen a more thrilling title.
Well, I mean, that's why you brought me, because my name's Max, and it's just a big pun at the end of the day.
It's nice.
We put this all together just to make that pun, really.
When we were talking about this event a couple of weeks ago, and then the 2 and 2 came together, I realized it was A, too late to change it, and B, like let's pretend that was a happy accident.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
But we got 3 great people, 2 today, and for the next 2 events, we'll have 3 of us. Max, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. Hey, everybody. My name is Max. I'm the chief evangelist over here at Happily and resident event nerd in terms of how to do events in HubSpot. I do a lot of our content. I'm very loud and annoying on LinkedIn, so you know about the apps that we're building. I spent 7.5 years at HubSpot doing new hire training, onboarding, sales engineer stuff. But now I spend my days shilling Big Paleta, which is Happily products. So I'm excited to be here, Chris. And real quick, just want to kind of throw in there, okay? I'm particularly excited about this series because, like, while I know what people complained about that were trying to use HubSpot to manage their events, and I was able to be part of the team and still am part of the team that like is building the product to make that easier. I don't know the first thing about running events outside of the context of HubSpot. If you were to tell me like, hey, what's a good strategy for how to like invite the right people or how to promote an event, I'd go, make a workflow that sends an email and then delays and sends another email. I wouldn't know any of this stuff, right? Which is why I'm like so excited to talk to you and Adam when he joins us, because I feel like there's this layer of strategic goodness that is not in my brain. It's really all just how do you make HubSpot do the things event marketers wish it did, right? So this is gonna be a learning experience for me too, which is great. So I'm stoked, man. Thanks for having me.
First joined Happily, and you guys had the first iteration of Event Happily, and we did like a live unboxing. I hadn't seen it before.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So I'm Christopher Nault. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth. Growth is not an event production company. Our origins were tied into that many, many years ago, which is why this topic is so interesting and relevant for me. Mm-hmm. 20 years, event promotion, production, you name it, from VIP dinners to thousands of people at conferences and louder types of events. And I'm really excited. Adam's not here this week, but he is such an awesome guy. He is the co-founder of Event Industry News. I think 100,000 people follow them on LinkedIn. It's really the go-to for best practices, new tools, highlighting really cool events and conferences all around the world. And he's going to bring je ne sais quoi to the conversation of real-time application. But essentially, events are really, really hard. And so much soul goes into them. It's so disappointing after all of months and months of work. You're resting afterwards. You go into the office virtually or in person to talk about how it went. And there's no way that the effort and energy that you put into this event, the connections that were made, are fully recognized by your boss, the board, someone who's didn't show up. It's the worst.
And what's really crazy, Chris, what's crazy is that usually the data that could tell that story of was it worth it or not, you probably have access to it, but it doesn't know the other data that it needs to tell that story even exists. And so it becomes really hard to tell that story, even though you technically have access to everything you need, right? So yeah, that's the real frustrating part. And a lot of people just give up on it too, if we're being honest.
A lot of event people are not always the most technology sound either. So
For sure.
even using Eventbrite can be like an emotional struggle. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not how the event brain is wired. We want to grab things and pick up things and pens and papers and all the classic arguments that we battle as people are improving how they operate. But like you said, you have to have it. It validates your job. It validates the rest of the event team's job. It gives you the ability to ask for more budget for the following year. It's a superpower. And so I think it's really our goal is to just show how simple it can be and how complex you can make it once you graduate to maybe level 2 or 3 of this level of usage, just so we can do events better. You know, that's really the goal. Do them better, spend a little less time, make a little bit more magic.
Absolutely.
That's what we're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about it.
So for the rest of this topic, we want to give a run of show. So we've covered some context. We're going to talk about CRM being your event ops HQ. Then we're going to get into events op hacking with Max. Then we're going to jump into a little Q&A. Feels good? Too late.
Feels so good.
So who here still uses 3 or more systems to plan an event? I know it's most of you. How many times
all the comments
have you? I know. How many times have you lost track of a registration because it simply lived in a separate spreadsheet? I know this is a lot of us too. Honestly, I hate it. So as senior event leaders, you're juggling partners, sponsors, speakers, venues, production teams, and all those spreadsheets, Slack channels, Google Docs. It's a risk to your launch date and to your sanity. By using HubSpot as your central event ops hub, you collapse those silos. Sales, marketing, and customer service can all see the same record, the same timeline, the same annotations, and no more misaligned handoffs. And that is a lot of words to basically say.
It is a lot of words.
It is a lot of words. You know, I've spent a lot of time prepping this deck, and I definitely overworked it. In a way, I care about the outcome of this. I want event people to understand that some habits are probably going to have to change. There's going to be a little uncomfortability in the change, but I'm famous for saying that you can't grow without it as a scientific fact. And it makes things a lot easier when all of these tools, we get MailChimp, we get Eventbrite, we get, just insert your list here. But if you do it all within HubSpot, which is what its superpower is, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah. And Chris, I want to kind of I want to chime in here. There was this,
Please.
like when we first kind of built Event Happily, I think like the first initial vision was like, oh, we're going to automatically generate a registration page and then people can register for the event and you can track the attendance. And like, that's kind of like all we had really, that's like as far as we thought it through. Right. But
marketing ops.
The thing that we like accidentally figured out as we like built it out more and saw what we had created and tried to make more content about it is that HubSpot being a CRM, it's natively bad at event management because it's not an event management tool. However, if you give it the things that an event management tool has that HubSpot lacks, and you can end up doing that work in HubSpot, it ends up making so much sense to run your events inside of HubSpot because your event stuff, your event data, your concept of events, your concepts of registrants, like things like that, all the stuff that you're doing in your event has such a natural fit inside HubSpot because it touches all the things that HubSpot's really good at. Email automation, marketing, sales stuff, customer service stuff. Your events has direct tangential relationships to all that stuff. But the other big thing, and we're going to talk about it later, is like all of the coordination and conversations and things that you're doing leading up to and planning the event. What is that, just like living in your inbox somewhere? Is it living in some separate spreadsheet? Kind of sounds familiar to what your sales reps were dealing with before you got into HubSpot, right? Y'all deserve that same level of consolidating and keeping track and collaborating in a single place, just like your service and your support teams do, right? Don't feel like you can't join in the party inside of HubSpot. So
you deserve it.
Yeah, man.
You deserve it.
Be good to
That's
yourself,
a single
event
source of
marketers.
truth argument, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know that this event is going to cost you a lot of money and a
Hmm.
lot of time. And so why would you not track where Chris is in the event and then Chris ends up being a buyer? You want to celebrate
Yeah.
that, and the lift isn't high.
Yep.
I think I really appreciate the real time visibility as well. So much of what we do as event people feels reactive. And to be able to see this in real time empowers you to be, I want to say more valued, but I just think it just creates a little bit more respect in the room for the
Yeah.
event team that's typically working underneath a CMO. Maybe
Yeah.
you're even like playing a senior marketing role and having to do an event. That is the absolute worst.
Yeah. I think it's also the
Helps a lot with
difference
that.
of, being able to answer the question of like, oh, how'd the event go to? It was great. We had a good time. Everyone had a smile on their face. Two, we opened up X amount of deals. They're at this stage. We've closed this much revenue without having to like reinvent sales operations to like figure out how to tangibly track that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So like being able to create that visibility, not only for yourself to like validate the work you're doing, but for others to be able to easily check and understand and have a place they can go is huge. And that's really tough to do, when you're not putting this all in one place. Right.
And that it can feel really distant, which is what I think keeps a lot of events teams from interacting with these sorts of tools or creating like a main hub of tools. And I just, whether you're implementing Happily or whatever kind of software, it's just really smart to take a phased approach. Like, don't feel like you have to be like a level 10. And we'll get into some level 10 stuff in Max's breakdown, but keep it simple, stupid is really like the best way to get started, and then iterate and then stay positive. It doesn't need to have a perfect outcome the first time you use it. I'm turning into such a professional hippie. All of my conversations basically accidentally, non-prompted, bleed to this mindset.
Dude, to be fair, that is so true about anything you do in HubSpot as well. You're never, ever going to nail it on the first try, right? And when you do try to over engineer it and nail it on the first try, all you do is delay getting to your mistakes that you would eventually got to anyway, right? But it's great to get to those mistakes quicker sometimes, right? And learn and iterate faster versus like analysis paralysis for fear of failing the first time, right?
And which now, one of the things that I think is really cool about Event Happily specifically is when you're inside your HubSpot and you're telling it the initial things about this event, the event title, the date, the number of attendees, it does something magical that no other tool does. It creates a bunch of your must have initial pre-event items, and it does it with the click of a button.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite? I mean, you've now dealt with a gazillion companies that are using Event Happily. Is it it creates the landing page?
Yep.
It creates your registration form. It creates some of your reporting, some of your baseline, whatever. Am I making this up?
No, you're not. I mean, a lot of that is like, it's up to you, right? Because a lot of the times we see people do a lot of reporting like on the event records itself, right? So inherently, just by creating the event record, your reporting for that event is already set up because you're using the power of HubSpot to display all that data that's associated to the event, right? That means you don't have to go build a dashboard. You don't have to build a dashboard or build a report that takes up space in your limited amount of those things that you can create, right? You're just seeing it on the record itself, right? And so when we got to go through a lot of this, stuff, we're very much talking in this first episode, pre-event. What's the painful stuff about pre-event, right? And not just the painful. What's the strategies and tactics, the stuff that really, really well, right? And so like I'll be showing some of that stuff where it's like, hey, focus on the strategy that Chris is talking about. And then there are ways in HubSpot to make your life easier to spend less time on all that, BS you got to deal with. So you can think more about the strategy and how you're going to, your copy, the way your workflows are set up, like all these other, fun, more strategic things. So yeah, there's a lot.
Don't forget, there are some people out there that haven't moved to HubSpot yet. And so if you have a CRM that isn't HubSpot, and you're like, wow, this all sounds great, but it's not physically possible with my Salesforce or whatever tool you're happening to be using, Monday CRM. Totally makes sense. There's a time and a place to evaluate the tools that you have and then potentially say, these no longer serve me. I need to let them go find a new set of tools. We'll talk about that. Also, maybe important to recognize that there are lots of things Event Happily and HubSpot can do. You, this senior event leader, may be struggling to build that bridge. That's where growth comes in. And that's what we are designed to do, is have conversations with you, understand what you're trying to get accomplished. And we handle the building for you. So you don't need to be a structural engineer of HubSpot to make all this work.
Yeah. And also going off the same, kind of track you were just going with, like, I might be using X tool and it feels impossible. Some of you might be here because you're using HubSpot and it still feels impossible. And that's okay. And that's why we built Event Happily, right? So we'll get into this is how it could be, right? At the end of each of the episodes, as I kind of go into some of the HubSpot stuff and, build it out that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, good call. This Event Happily and Happily's, all your products are built within the HubSpot API.
Every single one of them.
Someone told me that's where the logo came from. Makes
HubSpot
sense.
API.
Hindsight's 2020. So it just fits. You pay a fee, buy the software, and Bob's your uncle. I finally said that on a The next thing I want to talk about are just high level. The classic conversation around events is all about, Max, what is it?
The I, the R, the O, the I.
Yeah.
The R, the O, the I, the thing we get talked about so much, right?
Amen. Yep. It's a big deal. And okay, this is not rocket science equation. Not apologizing for it. But the biggest thing we as event marketers and event people are not doing is naming the I, naming the investment so we can define the return. That was the first thing, Max, when you showed me Event Happily, that caught my eye, was that ease of use. So if we wanted to keep it easy, bucket A, the cost of producing an event. Bucket B, your marketing budget. You add those two things together and you get C, which is your total investment. When I talk about iteration and building more complex systems, this is what I'm talking about. This is level one. Start here. And then Max is going to show you in a couple minutes that you can get far more granular, which, the Ambers and the Nicks on my team must have. I'm like a keep it top level kind of guy. So I'll start here.
Chris, can I ask you about ROI for a second? Because this is it.
I think so.
This is the one thing that I kind of notice, is that when people say we want to measure the ROI of an event, I find that there's some people that are quite literally, I would like to measure the dollar amount that we paid to put the event on versus the amount of money we made because of it, and do a very straight line equation of a percentage of ROI. I've seen those.
Shout out CFO.
Right? Shout out CFO. But then I think what's interesting is the R, the return. In HubSpot land, that's your deals. That's money. It's things with a quantifiable dollar amount, right? But I think sometimes, have you seen people kind of quantify return differently besides dollar amount, right? And try to measure other stuff? Or is it quite literally mostly just we want to see how much money we made from this event? What have you how have you seen people kind of define ROI a little bit differently, talking to folks about events in the past?
No, great question. I mean, there are a lot of ways, and this is the most simple way. You have the cost and the things and the contacts and what deals are generated. But I am a huge believer when it comes to marketing and branding and events that influence pipeline is a real thing. And the person that signs the deal may not be the person that attended the conference. And so in being able to track influence revenue at the company record, having contacts that participated in any of the marketing channels is slightly more complicated to set up just because of the nature of needing to think through the nuance of it. But to me, that's the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And whether we're talking ABM or any sort of direct sales marketing effort to generate revenue, no matter how experienced and educated the senior leaders that I work with, there's always somebody that's going to use the word quick. We want it quick. And relationships, really strong relationships, are rarely immediate. And so the native tools within HubSpot, compared with using Event Happily, just add a layer of sophistication to your data to really help paint a more real story that will serve you as event people to get more budget and to do more events, because this stuff works. Like relationships are real. And thank God we now have the ability to go back and just hang with people and talk shop.
Yeah.
It feels great.
Yeah. And it's like I think the other thing that I would like tell folks is like, I think it's okay if you're measuring your return a little differently than a dollar value from a deal. For example, your return just might be, we got X amount of leads from going to an event. Those don't have an inherent dollar value on them, right? But like, we might want to know that, right? And maybe so look at ROI as more of like a cost per lead, right? Like we spent $10,000 on the booth and we got 100 leads. I don't know. I should be able to do the math. I'm not going to do the math because I'm going to get it wrong and embarrass myself in front of people. But you know, it can be other stuff. Like, and the beauty of this is like, since you're doing it in HubSpot, like if you were a software company, like the return could be like, how many new signups did we drive to our software because of this webinar that we did, right?
Yeah.
And thanks to HubSpot's like ridiculous level of customization and reporting and all this crazy stuff you can do with it and its flexibility, you could quite literally blend that into like your ROI reporting, right? Because you can connect all this stuff in HubSpot because we're building this in HubSpot, right? Versus it being detached in a different system somewhere in Eventbrite land or something like that, right? So,
and you get to choose from all the cute different types of graphs and reporting for whatever story it is that you're trying to tell. But I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, cool. I was just curious because like it's just everyone. The one thing that this is what I'll say, that it's frustrating being in this space, Chris, is everyone does event management differently, and I've had to like do a lot of work. I've had to do a lot of work making myself okay with that and learning from that, right? But anyway, I'll let you continue.
No, I mean, it feels good being able to play into my past life and like kind of rehash some of those experiences, some traumatic, most less so, and see now with an operational mindset how we can have impact. But I still think it goes back to just like as event people, there's an uncomfortability with technology and tools. It's difficult to talk to the RevOps team. You know, there's a level of sophistication that is felt like is needed. And if we just get into the tools and start getting comfortable, just like we have all done with Gmail, it'll be fun, right? I think we've hashed out as much as we can on the most easiest.
Yeah, big takeaway here is like, figure out how you're tracking the investment because you'll never learn the return on investment unless you know what the investment is, right?
Yeah. You want to fight for your right to party, essentially, as one group one said. High impact promotional tactics. This is the former life. I'm very well known for this, and we pulled out a few of these tricks for this webinar series. But when Max was kind of explaining earlier, the ability to kind of set and launch a pre-event registration landing page and all that stuff, you now get to go into like HubSpot 101 marketing tactics. You've got marketing contacts. Maybe you have people that haven't opted in and you need to use sales sequences, but you have a database inside of your HubSpot that is attached to your events to do some of that preliminary. Hey, we've got an event coming up. Reserve your seat. Hey, you haven't reserved your seat yet. It's coming up in 30 days. Hey, you did reserve your seat. Now you have to pay here. Hey, sponsors, this is your opportunity. All of these, I would say, kind of like level one marketing actions can be done and are probably the foundation principles of HubSpot being built. Powerful. What are some of the ones? Actually, dealt with a lot of companies now.
Yeah,
using Event Happily. Is there anything? Have you seen anything that was like, that's really cool? That's slightly different.
Yeah, in terms of like engaging their database. Yeah. So a lot of it would either kind of come down to these like very intricate like RSVP situations people are creating, right? Like which is funny. Like out of the box, Event Happily doesn't have like an RSVP feature, but due to the nature of it being in HubSpot, you can literally build one fairly quickly, and we've gotten really good at it, right? Like, you know, so like I've seen folks who they've got like their event record, and then they go and like build a list of like the people in their database that they want to invite to it, and then they simply like run a workflow that like associates all the people to the event and then hit one button on the event record to automate an invite email personalized from the actual event record of like the event name, the event time, the event venue, the event location, like all this stuff, inviting people, right? And then as people say, yeah, I'm coming or not. They have these like RSVP status things that are like automatically changing and everything. And then they can just add more people and do it again. Right. And it's like such a unique way of like, it's like using the email tool, but using it like through an event record, which is like a really interesting concept. And it's giving me like all these ideas of like, how can we just build a UI extension that does this so we don't have to like build it manually each time. Right. But you know, that is probably like the biggest brain stuff that I've seen. But yeah.
I mean, it ties into what I've found really interesting, especially when we're talking about conference and trade shows and ones that have repeated for a while, is you get the attendees and they keep coming back. Okay, maybe the event is a legacy event and has been handed down to a new marketer. Maybe this is like the third or fourth marketer over the course of 20 years. And so a lot of the excitement that came with launching this event decades previously, that sizzle's gone, and this marketer is stuck in like I have to just click the buttons and get the things moving. Mm-hmm. Which is always sad to see, but it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I love about HubSpot, and go hit it.
You reminded me of another one. And shout out to the folks over at GeoMapper. Do you know GeoMapper? It's another app that is like the map app in HubSpot, right? So when we first came out with Event Happily, the guys that made it were like, Max, let me show you what we've had people that have invited folks to events before do, right? So like they go, cool, the event is going to be in like X place. And they literally showed me, they brought up a map of where the event's going to be. This is all in HubSpot, okay? Brought up a map of where the event's going to be, drew a circle around the area, and then made an invite list just by bringing in contacts that were in the freaking circle to go, yeah, it's an in-person event. We're inviting people that are close to the event. Draw it, list, send in meal, done. Right? Crazy work. Like you're not building like a filter or like building like list criteria. You're drawing out a map and saying, I want my contacts from here to get invited to it. Right.
So you're using like VIP dinners, right? And you're doing a series of these in even other countries. I mean, that I have someone that I hope I remember this in an hour so I can email them. That is like a great plug. Also, keep that CRM data right so that way it works. But that's a really, really cool trick.
Also, shout out like letting HubSpot have people build apps on it that can then work together when they speak the universal language of HubSpot data, right? Like, because it's one of those like 1 + 1 = 3 moments where it's like I'm combining Event Happily and GeoMapper, two apps that have nothing to do with each other nor have any integration between each other, and just inherently using them in HubSpot, I'm able to do this wacky thing I never would have imagined, right? And so
you're such a nerd.
Cool stuff. Yeah, I am.
I can tell you, like my eyes glaze over because you guys are so smart. You make such great tools that do so many cool things.
Dude, this whole ecosystem this whole ecosystem is haywire. It's awesome. They're great.
This is like the freebie trick. So you have a B2B conference or trade show or VIP dinner, but you don't know how to find people to invite. And so I'm going to call this ABM Lite. Most of us have access to a Zoom Info or a Clay or an Apollo. And if you don't, conversation on the side, hit me up. But essentially, you want to find out the commonality. You know me, start simple. What industry or industries are your best customers in? Where are they located? Country, state, city, dependent on the situation. And then who are the key job roles that you would want to talk to invite to your VIP dinners or trade shows? Once you have that core information, you literally go into any of these tools and you can build out a list, not only of the companies, but then with the job roles, you find that Chris Nault is the CEO and founder of Growth, and you can find how to get a hold of me. V1, email. V2, IP address, drop some ads on me. V3, phone number. Please don't do that, but you could. And these are your ways to grow your event, to introduce it to new people, because that's one of the hardest things is keeping the energy alive and then bringing in new blood. And so ABM can be insanely complex, just like events can be insanely complex, but really like it doesn't have to be, especially right out of the gate. So for any of you that are doing events that are on this webinar or listening online, I really think that think outside the box, but a lot of gurus out there and very Googleable and very ChatGPTable about how to leverage your external, grow your event, and use ABM Lite. and happy to be a resource for anybody that's specifically interested in more of that. We've only got a couple of minutes left of like this part of the segment, but I want to bring another heavy duty trick that I've seen help a ton of conferences all around the world. And that's by offering a mega powered giveaway as part of their regular ad marketing deployment. So I'm going to use Inbound as an example. And like Inbound is HubSpot's annual conference. I love it. It's always in Boston, except for this year it's in San Francisco, just about an hour away from me. And I'm so pumped. That aside, all of their ads are a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, the same Inbound logo, and a click here to learn more. And it's arguably awful. I would imagine that the marketing team in charge of it is seeing like, okay, data statistics. What I would love to see is knowing whether or not I'm in their database, and when I'm not, a different type of ad showing with some sort of like amped giveaway, breakfast with Yamati, VIP tickets, hotel. Go full kit, $5,000 value, and run the same ads across the same platforms and see how many more leads are generated, how many more tickets are sold. And it just takes a little bit of like, let's come up with something fun that'll pop off the screen, like marketing 101. And I want to bring this in here because we're talking about events, and I think that's the lowest lift way to get a more engaged return on your ad spend and your marketing is just by packaging it up and offering a cool experience.
Yeah. I can co-sign this. When we were at Inbound, all we did was say, hey, fill out our form and you could be entered to win a orange Yeti cooler. And my friend, when I tell you, I think literally every single person there filled it out because they wanted this freaking Yeti cooler. I wouldn't be exaggerating. Like we had 9 of us having conversations and capturing leads, with our lead capture, tools. And the iPad that was sitting at the table on top of the cooler eclipsed all of us combined by a magnitude of like 3. So yeah, dude, giveaways is still hit for sure.
Yeah, and of course, my head's still pre-event. And during the event, I mean, we've got one of my favorite clients is a safety apparel company, and they do a great job of showing up at events, and their demo loves those green eggs, grilling, smoking devices.
Yep.
And so be thoughtful. I could riff on this conversation pretty much all day. I love hooks. I love promotion. And now I'm just the founder of operations consulting company, so I get to do far less of this than I'm used to. The last thing I want to bring up is the zhuzhing. So I kind of talked about how events can kind of lose their light, and especially in like the conference and trade show space, there's this like need to just pump the things out. But the reason I highlighted the graphics here being created with ChatGPT is there's so many tools out that give marketers the ability to make things a little bit more exciting, even if they're not perfect, like the 3-armed musician in front of us. Take the time to make the event special. It impacts the people that are looking at it. Like if you're excited as an event marketer or event team, you have to be excited. You can't be doing this and not be excited. Try to sprinkle that in wherever you can. In California, we use the word zhuzh a lot. I realize that's not normal vernacular. It just means put a little emphasis on there, clean it up a little bit.
You zhuzh up a little bit. Yeah.
Throw an orange cooler. Matching shoes.
Yeah. And maybe have a little campfire on the ground. Shout out, Nikki.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you could say we Camp Happily had a fair amount of zhuzh behind it, right? And I think that's what made it such a magical experience. So co-sign that one as well.
Camper,
Rubber stamp it.
Camping. If
you do.
You brought the vibes.
Yeah, we did.
I would be remiss if I didn't share a LinkedIn hack with you too. And this one is by request of Amber, our Director of Revenue. For those of you that are marketing events using LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn events, highly recommend, even if it's an in-person event, that you take advantage of this free tool. It's free to create an event. And what I have found is developing a culture at Growth and with most of our partners is that we've created a sense of community and excitement when we are presenting things to the world. And so on LinkedIn events, and maybe I'll create a LinkedIn post about this, but you can literally attend an event and then you have the ability to share, which accesses your entire database of connected contacts. And so you and any individual can invite up to 1,000 people per week. So provided you set this up weeks in advance and you have a very large following, you can, over the course of time, really build up in an organic list. In fact, this event used purely organic reach, and I think we hit about 200, almost 210 RSVPs, excuse me, and we launched about a week ago. So I think it's just a really good example. I don't really have a forum to share these kind of old school tricks with. So here's my format. Just say it in these webinars.
Yeah. I will say, if you're like me and you're someone who literally never spent a second inviting people to LinkedIn events because you thought the experience was a manual nightmare, this broke my brain that you could do this simply by adding one filter and then scrolling down, and all of a sudden there's a magical select all button. So yeah, highly recommend this one if you're using LinkedIn to promote the events.
Yeah, don't gatekeep the event from people, making too many assumptions of whether or not they're a fit. They could say no. Send it is what I say. Let
Worst case
rip.
scenario, what, they ignore you?
Typical.
For sure. Yep.
Well, I think, Max, this is where we start switching into, like, you show them some of the magic.
Yes.
Again, ChatGPT, let it rip.
Yeah, we're going to let it rip. We're going to let it rip. Speaking of ripping, let me violently rip the screen share from you. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen up here. And for the producer watching, I will go ahead and eliminate the little recording chiclet at the bottom. Love you, Mizael. Anyway, folks, so here's a little disclaimer. I could speak to you for approximately 12 and a half hours straight on how amazing it is to manage your events inside of HubSpot. But since we have to break this in to a 3-part series, I am going to do my best to contain myself to just talking about some of the really, really important things I think you have to consider when using HubSpot to manage your events in the sort of like pre-event phase, right? Like a lot of times when we're thinking about the different like buckets of functionality or buckets of things you can do when it comes to like event management in HubSpot, we very much think of how we structured this like webinar series, right? You've got the before the event, the during the event, and the after the event. And there's plenty of things you're going to do in HubSpot just in general. There's plenty of features that we've created to make your life easier for the typical things you do before, during, and after an event. I'm going to do my best to really kind of contain, the conversation to the pre-event world here as we start looking at what life could be like if you were managing your events in HubSpot in the best way possible, right? And talking about the pre-event sort of phase, if you will, right? So I'm going to give you a minimal amount of context here because there's plenty of videos we make that get into all the crazy technical stuff of how Event Happily works. But just so like we're all on the same page here, one of the biggest fundamental things that we do when you install Event Happily is we give you a place inside of your HubSpot data structure to manage things like the events themselves, right? We don't use the marketing events object because it's not our favorite and not as customizable as a custom object. So we have a happily event object, which represents the event itself. And there's 1.5 billion reasons why it's important to have an actual representation of the event that you can play with, just like you can do any other object inside of HubSpot. We also have an object that contains information about your registrants, the people that actually register for your events, right? And it's really important that we contain that in its own object because, Chris, every single time you go to an event, that's an individual instance of you doing something very specific, just like an activity is or a deal every time you buy something. You registering for a specific event has a lot of characteristics and attributes that tell the story about, when you did that, why you did that, and what information you gave and what sort of experience you had. So we contain a lot of that stuff in these event registered objects. But we're not going to get too deep into the details there. We're really going to start with kind of like, all right, pre-event, even before the event, you know that you're about to do an event and you've talked with your team and you're like, hey, we're going to do this event on this day, and this is what it's going to be about, and here's a whole plan for it. We need to start working on it inside of HubSpot. So where does that journey begin? Well, it's pretty simple. You come into HubSpot, you go to your Happily events, you'll see your listing of all the different events that you've done in the past, and maybe if you have some you have scheduled for the future, right? And what you're going to do is you're simply going to come in and create a Happily event, just like you've done in the past with creating a deal, creating a company record, creating a contact. It's the same idea, right? And here you can give information about the event's name, give it a little quick description. When is it going to happen? Start date, end date. If you want to do some really fancy stuff around limiting the capacity of the event, right? And I know for a fact there are people watching that have gone on the HubSpot ideas board and said, can I shut off a form when it's been filled out X amount of times? And 1,000 out of 1,000% of you, I guarantee we're asking that question because you are trying your very best to use HubSpot to register people for an event that had a limited capacity, right? I don't think there's really any other reason you would be asking that question, right?
Right.
Long story short, we have some really cool tools that help you actually do that in HubSpot right now, which is great. But again, you would enter in information about where the event takes place, just so we can build assets on whether it's registration pages or emails or whatever it may be, right? And of course, since it's HubSpot, you can customize all of this. You can build custom properties. You can choose what questions show up. It's totally in your command, because remember, you can bend HubSpot to your will to create the event management process of your dreams. And that even comes down to how granular you are with how much information you give when you create your event. But let's say you filled that form out and you've created your representation of your future event here in HubSpot. All right. This is where I kind of want to get into the conversation of why are you still using a spreadsheet to keep track of all this stuff, right? Your marketing team, your sales team, your customer service team, hopefully at this point has graduated from using spreadsheets to manually track the work that they're doing, and they've moved into HubSpot. Yet I can't even tell you how many marketers I talked to in 2025 that are still managing the event stuff out of a spreadsheet. And it's fine. Listen, I understand it. HubSpot's a CRM tool. It's not an event management tool. So why would you have even thought to do it? Well, there's a number of reasons I think you should consider managing and planning and coordinating and tracking all of your efforts in producing an event that you're hosting inside of HubSpot. And that's just because records of objects in HubSpot are really, really good for that kind of stuff. Think about when you're using a deal in HubSpot, or using a deal. What are you doing? You're tracking emails with people that you're talking to about this deal, right? You're logging emails and communications about that deal. Yet when you're logging communications and tracking things that you're doing about this very intricate, high stakes event you're putting on, you're just kind of letting that float around in your inbox somewhere, or maybe you're manually checking things off in a spreadsheet, and none of it is inside of HubSpot. And you're taking advantage of none of those tools to be able to keep all that communication and coordination in one place, right? Think about it. When you're using an event record like this, you can set tasks for yourself. Go order 1,000 balloons. Go secure a catering vendor. Go, pick the perfect placemats or table covers for the VIP area, right? Use tasks to do that kind of stuff in HubSpot, right? If you want to leave a note here that says, hey, Chris, did you pick out the security vendor yet? Right? Or log that email to the person bringing chairs, right? You can keep track of all that stuff on an event record, just like you would do with a deal record or anything else, right? HubSpot's really, really good at consolidating this conversation and collaborating with your team when you're doing complex stuff, whether it's closing a deal or setting up a giant multi-person event, right?
And just throw it out. If your event production team is inside HubSpot, that's okay too. Communications between marketing and sales. Hey, I know Will is saying he wants to go to this event. Can you hook him up with a ticket? Mm-hmm. These sorts of conversations live very well inside here too.
Yes, salespeople can come to this record, tag the marketing coordinator who's the HubSpot user on this, and be like, hey, I've got a prospect that we want to register for this. Can you take care of it? Sure. And that's not just lost in an email somewhere. It's on the record. They can see it. If they don't see it then, they can see it later because they're coming here and seeing on the timeline. This is a wonderful place to break out of the spreadsheet of hell, right? And coordinate your events better, right? It's very simple, okay? So that's like my one little saying like, hey, guys, there's a reason for you to get into HubSpot, even if you're not using Event Happily to coordinate this stuff, right? Now, we talked a lot, about like the coordinating side of things and collaborating with folks and, how you can just simply use that. And like we've seen people do stuff like associate companies to events to say, here's our security vendor, here's our, table and chairs vendor, here's the caterer, right? And like even, put contacts on there with certain association labels that says this is the event coordinator we're working with, this is the venue operator, this is the that, right? So much you can do to kind of like keep track of managing your event. But again, we're talking about ROI, right? Return on investment. Okay. The investment piece is another thing that typically lives outside of HubSpot in some sort of spreadsheet, or maybe it's living in receipts that you got in your email somewhere, right? And let me tell you this. It's really difficult to measure ROI in HubSpot when the I doesn't live in HubSpot, right? And so when we're thinking about something like as simple as those investment buckets that you were talking about, Chris, right? Like, how do we actually track what we're spending or what we're actually investing into this event? Brother, an event record with a couple of custom properties ends up being really all you needed, right? And so, for example, and by the way, some people like play a little fast and loose with the way they kind of like generally, track how much money do we spend on this event, like ballpark it, right? Some people get very maniacal and want to actually track things down to the line item. The beauty of it with HubSpot is you can do that however you want, and you have the freedom, right, to just track expenses for your event in a very simple way that is easy to manage, or a super complex way if you want to do it. Again, the world's your oyster. HubSpot is yours. You have the power, right? So to give you some examples of this, right, it could be something as simple as when you have your event record and you kind of know your general costs, right? Like, let's see, we've got like, $1,200 in like general event costs, maybe, 47 or like $4,000 in logistics costs. We spent 10 grand on a marketing campaign. We got some stuff in here for productions. Wow, that's a lot, right? You can easily keep track of that stuff in a lightweight way and use something like a calculated field to give you your total event cost. This is going to be very important down the line after the event. Yes, here's the I. Right? The I is really easy to track in HubSpot, right? This is going to be really, really important for down the line when you want to actually create an equation that gives you the return on the investment, because you have the investment in HubSpot. I'll show you one more, a little, as Chris said, the level 10 way. Because again, flexibility is the name of the game in HubSpot. This is why it makes so much sense to do it in HubSpot. You can lean on that, infinite level of customization. We've seen people go as far as creating a whole tab for measuring their event ROI, and then even creating a custom object called event expenses, right? So if you don't want just like, if you're a person who's just like, well, just a general field isn't enough for me. Like, I want to know exactly every single thing I purchased to put this event on, right? And really track that investment. Create a custom object called event expenses, associate it to your event records, and then you can do something crazy like this. When you're on your event record, we've got Cool Robot's annual birthday bonanza. If you know who Cool Robot is, you're a real one. Talking to the OG HubSpot users out there. You can do something as simple as coming to your event record, hitting an add button here to add a new line item expense for your events, and say like, hey, you know what? We hired a clown at the event and we paid that clown $20,000, right? And then if you want to get real crazy, you can do like a file upload and take the, invoice that clown gave you and go ahead and upload it into here. And if you want to get really crazy, you can say, hey, we've actually paid this versus it being invoiced or someone quoted it for us. And then we're going to organize it into a cost category. You can think back to those different buckets that you were talking about, right? The logistics, marketing, and production costs, right? And easily give it a cost category. And then again, since it's HubSpot, you can lead into another really cool feature that everybody sleeps on, which is record single object reports on records, and even say, hey, for this event, I spent a bunch of money. Here's the different breakdown of the cost categories, right? You don't have to do this, but if you want to, you can, because it's HubSpot. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I first love the depth, but I think we missed one of the biggest, for marketers, the biggest thing that this helps with is you create these initial event pieces of information, and this landing page pops up. This event registration page.
Yep.
Could you just do a quick?
I'm gonna give it to him.
I would love to see that. We got a couple of minutes left before we're gonna answer some questions.
I'm gonna give it to him. What y'all haven't seen yet is, I know a lot of you go, all right, we picked the date for the event, and then you have this little conversation in your head of, oh, I've got to go create a form. I've got to go create a landing page. I've got to go create an email. I've got to go create a mechanism to track attendance, right? With Event Happily, as soon as you create that event record, depending on how you set it up, you literally have a registration page that has all the information from your event right here. And if you were to go change the name of the event, change the date, change the description, add a sponsor, add a speaker, this page automatically updates without you having to send your developer after it, right? So literally just by creating an event, you have a place to collaborate with your teammates. You got a place to track all your expenses, and your registration process is already stood up. And as soon as you share that link with people through an email, they can start registering for the event. That easy, right? So
out of the box, right? Like
out
you
of the
can
box.
add the speakers, boom. You add
Out of
the
the
image,
box after some light
some
onboarding, because everyone configures this a little bit differently. But yeah, essentially, right?
Yes.
Cool.
I just think
and
that's
then
important
even
to recognize.
yeah, and even your registration emails, complete with QR codes that'll track attendance. Out of the box, we've got templates for all of it. We help you set it up. Super duper easy. It's one less thing you got to worry about every time you set up a new event. Anyway, I'm gonna stop sharing because you know me. I could talk about this for hours.
I know, and it's putting me to sleep. It's a mix of like your beautiful voice and how like granular you get.
Yeah, my voice is beautiful and granular.
I mean, that piece alone saves you 5 hours. So 3 hours if you're a ninja with it, 10 hours if you're like most marketers with it.
And probably like
So
24 if you're a perfectionist. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
10 events a year, 15 events a year. You can do the math, saves you a week. What can you get done with a week? Take a vacation, maybe, whatever you want to do.
Yep. Investments are also time, right? Lower that time investment.
Well, I appreciate being able to spend what I would say just a little bit about time working with you on this event happily, like a mix of demo and a mix of how it helps you. But I know we had a couple of people that asked some questions. And so I believe Amber is working in the background to share some questions. The first one, do you think sponsoring an event positively increases ROI? Do I think sponsoring an event? Okay, that's a good question. And I think it can, which is the worst. It depends on the type of the event.
It is a hard, it depends.
You know how it doesn't work is if you sponsor the event and you don't show up, if you're not marketing beforehand that you're sponsoring, if you're not active during, and if you're not using the tools that happily give you to follow up afterwards, no, it doesn't work. So I guess that's the dependency, is make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then basically listen to this webinar, and we gave you 10, 20 different ways to make sure that investment pays off.
Yeah. Dumping money into something and getting your name up on like some, stuff at the event isn't inherently going to increase your return if you don't create the mechanisms to capture what's needed to drive a return after it. Right. So yeah, will it increase brand awareness? Sure. Is brand awareness return on investment for an event? Maybe for some people. It depends on how much you want to measure that, right? Some people, the return is vibes, and that's okay. For other people, like the CFO, deals.
I love vibes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, big vibe guy.
Don't forget.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's for you. I'm gonna fall asleep.
How do you enable new events and forms easily? So I can only imagine this question was written by somebody who is sick of cloning a new form every time they have an event because they got to tie it up to a list and build a workflow and do like all this fun stuff. The answer here is Content Hub Pro, to be honest, and Event Happily, right? We built this, I'm not going to get so deep into it, but I'll say we built this really, really insane CMS module for forms that takes HubSpot forms and gives them all the superpowers that they don't have out of the box to do things like multi-person registration, sessions select, like multi-session selection, being able to turn the form off when the event's full, wait list functionality, a lot of stuff like that. So it takes a lot of engineering, but like that's why we have Event Happily, so you can do that kind of stuff out of the box, right? And not have to do the form every single time.
So Growth has the #1 event theme on the HubSpot marketplace. It's Redwood Apex. So if you're looking for the landing page, it's ours. We've had almost 10,000 downloads. It's crazy. But have we talked to you?
Dude, I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
BT dubs. And then Nathan and Beta on our team are working with Dax to create some modules that will be free as well. So the theme is free for landing pages. It's 4 events. Number one theme. Sorry, shameless plug. And some things. You remember we were talking in Slack a couple of weeks ago, and you're like, "Hey, we need these things." I suppose Nathan and Dax have had a conversation, and so more free tools.
Now that makes sense. Yes. Okay. Cool.
So just FYI, if you're looking for a great landing page, I think it's got like 4.9 out of hundreds of reviews, 8,000 plus downloads.
Yep.
Check it out. Apex.
Yeah.
Or
the other thing I'll kind of add into that, to the new event part of that question, is that Event Happily allows you to use the same form across multiple events without having to create and manage multiple forms per event, right? You can do that if you want to, right? But there are ways of using dynamic content to not have to live that hell of managing a million forms over time, right?
And that's why it's find an implementation partner. Obviously,
work with these guys.
A great one.
Yeah.
But, whatever. We've got time for one last question.
Oof.
Do you have recommendations for managing a wait list? First of all, respect to you for creating so much hype that you've got a wait list. I just want to, whoever that person is, yes. Nice job.
Yep.
So how do you manage a wait list?
Yeah.
Like the airport?
Yeah. Give your strategic side of it, and then I have a nerdy HubSpot thing.
I mean, I suppose there's two things. There's fairness, and then there's strategic. I would look at the wait list and weigh who needs to get in that room, and then I would find a way to get them in.
Yeah.
That's probably my truest answer.
Cool. Yep. So the way we've done it, it's funny. So there's the way we've done it, and then there's features we're building right now to manage it in a much cooler way. So right now, what we have is in our form module, we literally have an option that you can turn on that would basically say, if the capacity of the event is full, send them to show a different form, right? So instead of your event registration form, it pops up a waitlist form. And then that's literally just a matter of building a list of people who filled that form out, right? And there's a lot of different kind of micro methods you can use to do that a little bit differently. However, we're actually halfway through the process of building a UI extension on the event record that will literally say, when people get waitlisted for an event, you can see the waitlist on the event record and hit one button to complete their registration, right? So that's something that's going to be coming in the future. We've built about 50% of it, and the next step is the actual extension. So more to come on that. You'll see me make a loud video about it when it's done.
Cool. And maybe it'll be something that we drop at one of the next events. So just to remind you, this is part 1 of a 3-part series. Next Wednesday, we'll have Adam Perry from Event Industry News with us. He's the man. Max is the man. We're all great people. We would love to help you. If you have any questions, if you need a demo, any of that stuff, please slide into Max's DMs on LinkedIn or respond to an email. I mean, it's 2025. There's a gazillion ways to get a hold of us. We want to help you have better events using HubSpot. Happy eventing.
Absolutely. Happily eventing. Ooh.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everyone else for joining us. That was great.